I still remember the sound before I saw anything. That ugly, metallic scrape you only hear when somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing. At first, I thought it was construction down the block. Then I heard it again, sharper this time, like someone was ripping a zipper through steel. I stepped out onto my front porch with a mug of coffee still steaming in my hand, and my brain literally took a second to process what I was looking at. Two men in matching dark uniforms were leaning into my wife's classic car, wedging a pry bar into the door seam like they were breaking into a stolen vehicle. The passenger mirror was already hanging at a crooked angle. The paint along the edge looked scuffed down to bare metal. And standing behind them like a proud supervisor inspecting her staff was a woman with a clipboard, a pressed white polo shirt, and the kind of smug confidence you only see in people who've never been told no in their entire life. Her name was Elaine Mercer, and she was the HOA president of Maplecrest Heights, the neighborhood we'd moved into just 3 months earlier, because we wanted peace, quiet, and a garage big enough to protect the one thing my wife cared about more than any fancy kitchen, more than the yard, more than the neighborhood pool. Her car, a 1968 Mustang Fastback, dark cherry paint, white racing stripes, a throaty engine that sounded like a living heartbeat when it started up. That car wasn't just a collector's item. It was a promise. It belonged to her dad. He rebuilt it with his own hands after he came home from the army, after decades of service, after injuries he never talked about. And when he passed, he left it to my wife, Claire, with one request. Don't let it rot. Keep it alive. So yeah, watching two strangers damage it on my own driveway felt like someone reaching into our house and tearing up a family photo album right in front of me. I walked down the porch steps, trying to keep my voice calm. Hey, what the hell are you doing to that car? One of the guys didn't even look up, just kept prying like he was opening a can. The other glanced at me, expression blank, like he'd been trained not to react. Elaine, though? She turned slowly and smiled like she was greeting a tenant at her office building. Good morning, Mr. Barnes, she said. We're taking care of an ongoing violation. I blinked. A violation? That's my wife's car. Elaine tapped her clipboard with her pen. It's an inoperable classic vehicle, stored in plain view. That's a breach of Section 6.3. Non-operational project cars are not permitted on residential driveways. I felt my jaw tighten. It's not inoperable. My wife drove it 2 days ago. Elaine's smile didn't change. We've received complaints. From who? I asked. Which neighbors? Elaine's eyes narrowed the tiniest bit, like I'd committed a social crime. Complaints are confidential. I took another step toward the Mustang, and the uniformed guy with the pry bar pushed harder. The doorframe flexed, and that sound, that sickening crunch of metal bending the wrong way, went straight through me. Stop, I snapped, louder than I meant to. Stop right now. You're damaging the car. Elaine raised one hand, palm out, like she was calming an aggressive dog. Sir, you need to step back. I stared at her. Step back? From my own driveway. And that's when she did it. She turned her body slightly, so any neighbor peeking through a window could see her clearly. And she raised her voice like she was performing. Do not approach my contractors, she announced. You are acting threatening. I froze. I'm not threatening anyone. I'm telling them to stop destroying my property. Elaine was already pulling out her phone. Her thumb moved fast, practiced. I'm calling the police, she said, and her tone wasn't scared. It was satisfied, like she'd been waiting for this moment. Before I could even say another word, she was already speaking into the phone in that sweet, concerned voice people use when they want authority on their side. Yes, hello. I need officers sent immediately. There's a man here being aggressive toward HOA personnel. He's threatening removal staff. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like I missed a step. Because I knew how this goes. I'm not a fighter. I'm not some loud guy who likes conflict. I'm a software engineer who works from home, pays his bills on time, waves at neighbors, and avoids drama. But suddenly I could see the whole trap forming in real time. Strangers in uniforms as witnesses, the HOA president as community leader, me as the aggressive resident. And the car? The car was just collateral damage. The neighborhood was quiet. The sky was perfectly blue. Birds were chirping like it was any normal Saturday morning. And I was standing there watching my life get rewritten into a story I didn't control. Then the back door opened, and I heard soft footsteps behind me. Claire stepped out onto the porch in her oversized sweatshirt, hair messy like she'd just woken up, laptop under one arm. She walked down the steps slowly, and at first she didn't say anything. She just looked at the Mustang. She looked at the cracked door seam, the scrape lines along the paint, the dangling mirror. And something in her face changed. Not anger, not panic. Something colder, something focused. Elaine turned toward her like she'd discovered a new obstacle. "And you are?" Claire's voice was quiet and flat. "I'm the owner of that vehicle." Elaine gave a little laugh that wasn't friendly. "Well, then you need to explain to your husband that tantrums won't stop enforcement actions." Claire blinked once. "Tantrums?" Elaine stepped closer, clipboard tight under her arm. "I have already contacted the police. Your husband has been threatening my contractors." Claire didn't argue. She didn't plead. She didn't do what most people would do when their property is being destroyed in front of them. She just nodded once, like she was mentally filing something away, and said, "Okay." That was it. Just okay. And for a second, I didn't understand. I wanted her to scream. I wanted her to stop them. I wanted her to grab the pry bar and tell them to get off our driveway. But Claire stood there calm. Way too calm. And I didn't realize until later that calm was not surrender. Calm was strategy. For minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up like Elaine had ordered it off a menu. 2 officers got out, both younger, both scanning the scene with that cautious posture cops have when they're expecting trouble. Elaine marched right up to them, clipboard held high like it was a badge. "Officers, thank goodness," she said. "This man became aggressive when we attempted to enforce a violation. I feared for my safety." One of the officers turned to me immediately, hand hovering near his belt. "Sir, step back for me." I did. I stepped back like I was told, because I could feel how quickly this could go bad if I didn't. Elaine kept talking, calm and polished, pointing at the Mustang like it was a crime scene. Section 6.3 prohibits inoperable classic vehicles being stored on driveways. We authorized removal. He approached my contractors aggressively. The 2 uniformed guys stood behind her, silent, nodding like they were part of a choreographed routine. One officer asked me, "Is that true? Did you threaten them?" I swallowed my pride. "No. I came outside because they were prying into my wife's car. I told them to stop because they were damaging it." The officer looked at the car, then at Elaine, then back at me. And I saw it in his eyes. Hesitation. But then Elaine said it, the most dangerous sentence she could have said. "I have witnesses." The security guys nodded again in unison. And that was the moment I felt my stomach twist, because I realized the truth wasn't the only thing being weighed here. Credibility was. Uniforms were. Community leader was. And I was just the guy in sweatpants standing by a car. A small crowd started forming across the street. People pretending they were just out walking their dogs. People standing at the edge of their driveways like they accidentally ended up there. Elaine noticed them and got louder, turning her voice into a neighborhood announcement. "This is why we have standards," she said. "We protect property values. We keep our communities safe." A couple people nodded. One woman whispered something to her husband. I could feel it happening. The social judgment forming like a storm cloud over my house. The new couple. The problem couple. The people who don't respect the rules. Claire stayed quiet the whole time. She didn't argue with the cops. Didn't plead with Elaine. She stood there holding her laptop like she belonged in the scene, like she wasn't afraid of any of it. At one point, one officer glanced at her and squinted, like something about her looked familiar, but he looked away fast. Elaine didn't notice. She was too busy performing. In the end, the cops didn't arrest me, but they handed me a little card with an incident number. "Sir, if you want to dispute this, you can contact the HOA and take it to civil court," one of them said, voice stiff. Then they left, just like that. And Elaine smiled, thin and victorious, like she'd just won a chess match with a single move. She turned to Claire and said, "Expect a formal notice. This behavior will not be tolerated." Then she got into her little HOA golf cart and drove off like she'd done a good deed for the community. The security guys stopped their work and left too, but the damage was already done. The Mustang's frame was bent. The paint was scarred. The mirror was ruined. Claire walked over slowly and ran her fingers along the scrape line like she was touching a bruise. I whispered, "I'm so sorry." She didn't look at me. She said, "Don't be." Then she turned and walked inside. For the next 10 minutes, she didn't say a word. She sat at our kitchen table, opened her laptop, and started typing like her life depended on it. I stood by the window watching neighbors drift back into their houses like they'd just finished watching a show. Finally, I asked her, Claire, what are you doing? She didn't look up. Building a file, she said. Her tone was calm, but that calm scared me more than yelling would have. Then she turned the laptop toward me. A folder with today's date. Inside were 3 video files, doorbell camera footage, a recording from her laptop webcam angle, and audio from her phone. Every second, every word, every lie. I stared at her. You recorded all of that? She nodded once. The moment I heard metal scraping outside, I hit record. That's when it hit me. Claire wasn't just calm because she was composed. She was calm because she was prepared. And then she opened another folder, one I'd never seen, labeled Maple Crest. Inside were emails, complaint screenshots, photos of other cars being towed, a scanned letter from a family across the neighborhood that said the HOA had removed their vehicle without proper notice. I felt my mouth go dry. What is this? Claire finally looked up, and her eyes were sharp. Elaine Mercer, she said, has been doing this for years. I whispered, how do you know? Claire's voice stayed steady. Because I've seen her name before. And then she told me the part that made my blood run cold. Claire wasn't just someone who worked late nights on a laptop because she liked being busy. Claire was an attorney, not the kind that does contracts for tech companies. The kind that deals with abuse of power, corruption, and civil rights complaints. She didn't talk about it much because she didn't need to. She wasn't the type to wave her job around like a trophy. But months earlier, her office had received multiple complaints about Maple Crest Heights HOA. They didn't have enough evidence to go after anyone. Until now. Until Elaine decided to crowbar her way into our driveway and make herself the star of her own crime scene. I sat down slowly. So what happens now? Claire closed the laptop gently, like she was sealing a weapon in a case. Now, she said, we let her escalate. I blinked. You want her to escalate? Claire nodded. Because people like Elaine don't stop when they think they've won. They get bolder. They get careless. And careless is where evidence lives. The next day, the neighborhood app exploded. Elaine posted a community safety alert that didn't use my name, but might as well have. New resident displayed aggressive behavior toward HOA personnel during enforcement action. Residents should stay vigilant. Comments poured in, calling me unstable, dangerous, entitled. A few people defended us half-heartedly, but they got drowned out by the people who wanted a villain. And then, like she was following a script, Elaine sent a letter through the HOA attorney accusing me of harassment and intimidation, telling me not to contact the board. The worst part? People started treating us differently. Neighbors who used to wave stopped making eye contact. A guy down the street who always jogged past our house suddenly crossed to the other sidewalk. Our own street felt like it was turning against us because one woman with a clipboard decided we were the enemy. And Claire? Claire just kept building the file. Repair estimates, photos, police records requests. She requested body cam footage. She requested dispatch audio. She filed formal complaints with the county. She called in favors quietly, professionally, the way she always does when she's doing real work. Then the HOA announced an emergency hearing. Elaine wanted to officially fine us, declare the Mustang an illegal nuisance vehicle, and authorize a tow within 30 days. When we walked into that community center, it felt like walking into a courtroom where everyone already hated you. Elaine stood at the front smiling like a teacher about to punish a student. 2 security guys sat beside her like bodyguards. The board looked nervous but obedient. Elaine gave her speech about standards, values, safety. All the buzzwords people love because they sound like morality without requiring honesty. Then she pointed at us and said, they refused to cooperate. They were aggressive. They tried to intimidate enforcement personnel. People murmured. A few shook their heads. And when she finished, she smiled at Claire like she was about to enjoy this part. Mrs. Barnes, Elaine said loudly, you're an attorney, correct? You should understand how serious this is. Claire stood up slowly, walked to the front, and didn't raise her voice once. Yes, she said, I'm an attorney. Elaine's smile widened. Then you know this board has authority. Claire nodded. I do. Elaine leaned forward. So you understand you don't get special treatment. Claire looked at her calmly and said, neither do you. The room went quiet. Elaine's face twitched. Claire placed a single folder on the table. Before you vote, Claire said, I'm entering this into the official record. One board member hesitated. What is that? Claire's voice didn't change. Evidence. Elaine laughed, sharp and fake. Oh, please. Claire clicked a remote, and the projector screen turned on behind her. Doorbell footage. Clear as day. The security guard prying into the Mustang. Elaine standing behind him, giving instructions. And then, the audio. Elaine saying, "Hurry up, he's going to come out soon." People gasped. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth. Elaine's posture stiffened like someone poured ice down her spine. Claire played the next clip. The body cam footage from the officer. Elaine telling the cops I was threatening her. While the video showed me standing back, hands open, asking them to stop damaging the car. Then Claire played the HOA message post screenshot. The attorney letter. The edited security clip Elaine posted. "This," Claire said, "is a deliberate pattern of defamation and abuse of authority." Elaine exploded. "This is a setup," she shouted. "You planned this. You moved here to trap me." Claire tilted her head slightly. "No, Elaine. You did what you always do. You just finally did it to someone who documents everything." The board members looked terrified now. Not of US. Of her. Because they realized they weren't on the right side anymore. Elaine started panicking, switching gears like a car losing traction. "This vehicle is still a violation," she snapped. "It's a junk car." Claire didn't even blink. "The Mustang is registered, insured, fully operational, and valued at over $60,000. Elaine stammered. "That's irrelevant." Claire looked at the crowd. "What's relevant is that Elaine authorized private contractors to damage private property, lied to police on camera, and used HOA power to intimidate residents." Then Claire turned back to the board. "If you proceed with enforcement, I will file suit against the HOA, not just Elaine, meaning every board member who votes yes becomes personally discoverable." That's when the room changed. Suddenly, nobody wanted to be Elaine's friend. A board member cleared his throat. "I motioned to pause enforcement until legal review." Another said, "Second." Elaine whipped her head around. "You can't do that." Claire smiled slightly. "Actually, they can." The vote went through. Enforcement paused. Elaine screamed that she'd sue everyone. She stormed out in front of the entire neighborhood, finally shedding that polished mask and revealing exactly what she was underneath. A bully who relied on fear, not rules. 3 weeks later, it got worse for her. Not because Claire used her power, but because Elaine left a trail. The county opened an investigation. The security company dropped her. The HOA attorney quietly withdrew. Then news got around that multiple families had evidence of Elaine doing the same thing for years. Cars towed. Fines manufactured. Threats. False police reports. Elaine didn't just lose the presidency. She became a liability. By summer, she was gone. Sold her house quietly. Moved out before she could be officially removed. And the irony? The Mustang got fully restored. Better than before. The mirror replaced. The doorframe fixed. The paint retouched. But Claire insisted we keep one tiny scratch visible under the passenger side trim. A scar. A reminder that people will hurt you the second they think you're powerless. And me? I learned something I didn't expect. I learned how easy it is for a community to turn on you. Not because you're guilty, but because someone confident says you are. And that's what I want to ask you. Was Claire right for going nuclear? Or should we have tried to handle it peacefully? Even though Elaine clearly wasn't playing fair? Because some people told us later that we went too far, that we ruined her life. But here's what I say. Elaine didn't panic because she was innocent. She panicked because she got caught. So tell me in the comments. If in HOA, Karen had your wife's classic car damaged on camera, then lied to police and tried to paint you as a threat, what would you do? Would you fight it quietly? Or would you burn the whole system down and expose everyone who let it happen? Drop your take below. And if you've ever lived under an HOA that felt like a dictatorship, I want your story too. And trust me, I read every comment. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.